somewhere just to get a ring and not just finally close a chapter?
He's delivered a ring to all the places he's played with, and all the places he's played with are going to retire his number. How's that for a legacy? If you're going to get him at incredible value, your team better damn well be set and ready to go.
You trust the process of actually getting to that.
None of us saw this coming. LeBron James just took a 92% pay cut to chase his 5th championship ring. Let that sink in for a second. The NBA's all-time leading scorer, fresh off a season where the Lakers paid him $52.6 million, has now signed with the Philadelphia 76ers on a 2-year, $8 million deal. That's the veteran minimum this season, with a player option worth $3.9 million after that. There are two-way players in this league who will essentially out-earn LeBron James on a per-game basis this year. And the team he chose to join? They were just handed an all-NBA superstar 3 weeks ago by their biggest rival, and it was practically a gift. That trade looks so one-sided that I genuinely believe we could be witnessing the greatest single offseason any franchise has ever pulled off in NBA history. And I'm going to prove that by stacking it up against the other legendary offseasons the league has ever seen. So this morning, July 24th, with no big TV special this time, LeBron James posted something on X, and buried inside it was a detail even wilder than the team he ended up choosing. He seriously considered retirement. He admitted he was almost certain he'd played his final game the moment last season ended. He sat with that thought for weeks alongside his family, and for the first time in his entire career, he genuinely didn't know what came next. Then he came out on the other side of it and said he believes he can help turn the Philadelphia 76ers into a championship team, calling this year 24 one last dance in Philadelphia. And the second Shams posted it, it consumed the entire sports world instantly.
You're on the toilet. This is what I come across.
I want you to really understand who lost this sweepstakes. Remember, Giannis Antetokounmpo never even picked up the phone to try recruiting LeBron James to Miami. Pat Riley played it coy at Giannis's introductory press conference, saying, "We landed the plane, now there's another one we have to land." LeBron ended up choosing Philadelphia over Cleveland, Miami, and several other suitors. He chose the Sixers over Golden State and Minnesota, too. Cleveland was right there, offering that full circle ending, the chance to retire exactly where his story began. That would have been the perfect Hollywood finish, and he basically had that script handed to him and passed on it, passed on his old team. He skipped over his love for Miami, his home back in Northeast Ohio, and his gratitude toward the Lakers, and instead put his signature on the one city he'd shown the least sentimental attachment to. He picked Philadelphia purely on basketball. Now remember, we'd previously assumed LeBron would choose a team based on where he could remain the focal point. You can pretty much throw that theory out the window now. The reason so many of us wrote off the Sixers as a landing spot is that he'd easily be the fourth option on a roster already featuring Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Jaylen Brown. But two things ultimately won him over. First was an aggressive recruiting push, with Maxey, Embiid, and Brown all reaching out personally along with the front office. The players themselves came and got him directly. Second was a familiar face waiting upstairs. The Sixers' new president, Mike Gainey, goes way back with LeBron, all the way to LeBron's high school days in Ohio, and later worked in Cleveland's front office. The man now running Philadelphia has known LeBron since they were both teenagers. In a decision this close, 25 years of trust can be the tiebreaker. Pennsylvania's governor has already declared July 24th National LeBron James Day. The man was a Sixer for one single morning, and he's already got a statewide holiday named after him. But hold on, because underneath all that confetti sits a question nobody's really answering today, and it's been nagging at me for a month. The situation LeBron walked away from might have genuinely been the best possible setup for a 41-year-old anywhere on the planet. So before we get into what Philadelphia actually built this offseason, and trust me, there's a lot to unpack there, I want to talk about the exit first, because why he left LA and why he landed in Philadelphia are core to this entire story. And I promise, understanding that is going to make everything that follows hit even harder.
That's so easy, man. You might want to reconsider what you're doing. I can't. Would I make the same decision? No. The Lakers, I've been a Laker fan since
I know the Laker history all the way from Minneapolis all the way to where it is today. Right? Yeah, I'm not gonna go anywhere. Like, this is home to me. As a leader, you gotta be able to take the good with the bad.
Before we get into anything that might sound like criticism, let's take a moment to actually appreciate what this man did for the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James in a Lakers jersey was genuinely special. He arrived in 2018 to a franchise that had become a punchline. 6 straight years without a playoff appearance, the once proud Lakers reduced to a lottery team. And it's not like they were even hitting on their draft picks. Sure, they had some pieces that looked promising at the time: Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, Kyle Kuzma, D'Angelo Russell, and Lonzo Ball. But if you trace where those players ended up, they either turned into overpaid, high-volume, low-efficiency guys who couldn't get it done in the playoffs, solid role players at best, or washed out of the league entirely. 2 years after joining the Lakers, LeBron was standing in the Orlando bubble holding the Larry O'Brien Trophy and his 4th Finals MVP, dragging that franchise to its 17th championship. He didn't just join the Lakers, he resurrected them. And the numbers back it up. Across 8 seasons in Los Angeles, LeBron averaged 25.9 points, 7.9 assists, and 7.7 rebounds a game, finishing his Lakers tenure inside the franchise's top 10 all-time in points, assists, field goals, and three-pointers made. Think about who else sits on those leaderboards: Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kobe Bryant, Jerry West. And LeBron walked in at age 33 and carved his name in right next to them in under a decade. So I want to be absolutely clear. Nothing I'm about to say takes anything away from what he did for this franchise. This isn't a man who owes the Lakers anything. If anything, it's the reverse. Hold on to that thought, because I could get pretty critical of how things unfolded from here. So if it was that good, what actually happened? It didn't collapse overnight, it faded slowly, and it started with a trade nobody saw coming. In February 2025, the Lakers pulled off the unthinkable, trading Anthony Davis to Dallas for Luka Doncic, without question a top 3 superstar in the league who never should have been available in a trade, and it instantly rewired the franchise's entire future. Ask any general manager in the league. From the Lakers side, landing Luka for AD is a heist. I'm not going to sit here and call that a bad basketball move. But in a single trade, the Lakers went from being LeBron's team to being built around a 26-year-old face of the franchise. And with LeBron sitting at 41, of course the organization was going to build its future around Luka instead. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. According to reporting from Ramona Shelburne and Brian Windhorst, the Lakers began quietly shifting the franchise's identity from LeBron to Luka almost immediately. There was a meeting back in May of last year involving Luka, his agent Rob Pelinka, and JJ Redick, where Luka was handed a binder laying out the franchise's long-term plans built entirely around him. And the detail that really stood out to me is that this was the same binder that used to be presented to LeBron. Now it belonged to Luka, and LeBron wasn't even in the room. Sit with that for a second. The franchise mapped out its future in a literal binder, and the man who delivered their most recent championship wasn't invited to see it. It didn't stop there either. Shelburne also reported that the Lakers met with Luka last summer and mapped out this entire 2026 offseason, and LeBron simply wasn't part of those plans. So this wasn't LeBron blindsiding the Lakers by leaving. The Lakers had quietly drawn up a future without him a full year earlier. They just never said it out loud. He's not jumping ship, he's reading the room. Worth remembering, too, the Lakers could have offered LeBron a 3-year, $182 million extension to lock him in long-term, but around the league, nobody actually expected them to make that offer, and they didn't. When a team doesn't even extend the offer, that silence says plenty on its own. But if you want the single moment where the writing became permanent, it actually had nothing to do with LeBron directly. It was about Austin Reaves. In late June, the Lakers handed Reaves a 4-year, $185 million max contract, the richest deal ever given to an undrafted player in NBA history, and how they got there tells the whole story. The Lakers initially tried to have it both ways, offering him around $30 million a year, banking on the fact that after Minnesota traded for Julius Randle and sent Nickeil Alexander-Walker elsewhere, two of Reaves' top suitors were suddenly out the picture. But then a new contender emerged, the Detroit Pistons, who came in ready to offer him a full max deal and even willing to trade Isaiah Stewart to clear the cap room, which they eventually did. That sent Los Angeles into panic mode, worried they were about to watch a repeat of the Jalen Brunson situation, so they jumped their offer all the way up to $46 million a year to keep him. And here's why that matters for LeBron, for two reasons. First, the symbolism. The deal locks Reaves in as the long-term second star alongside Luka, making it unmistakably clear where the franchise sees its future heading. As LeBron enters the closing stretch of his career, the Lakers picked their next decade, and it's Luka Doncic and Austin Reaves. LeBron isn't in that picture, and they backed it up with $185 million. And the second is the financial reality. Luka and Reaves are now set to combine for roughly $90 million next season, leaving the Lakers very little cap flexibility, an overpay that could restrict the roster for years to come. So even if LeBron had wanted to stay, there was barely any money left to build a real supporting cast around him anyway. The organization had already committed its resources to the younger core. And I wasn't the only one raising an eyebrow at that number. Now here's the detail that turns this from a financial story into a full-blown soap opera. Back in January, on his own podcast, Rich Paul floated the idea of sending Austin Reaves to Memphis in exchange for Jaren Jackson Jr.
Lakers, I would probably be targeting the Memphis Grizzlies as a trade partner. I would be trying to get Jaren Jackson. There's a world where you can do what's best for your team and do what's best for all.
The Lakers were reportedly frustrated that their star's agent kept putting public takes out on a teammate's future, and there was even a tense confrontation between Reaves' camp and Rich Paul at a Lakers game. And when you connect those dots, it's hard not to see it clearly. LeBron's camp wanted Reaves moved, and the Lakers responded by making him the richest undrafted player in NBA history. If you needed one clean signal of whose vision the organization was actually building around, that's about as clear as it gets. So does LeBron James even have a right to feel disrespected here? That's genuinely up for debate, and honestly, I keep flip-flopping on it myself. So let me lay out both sides and let you decide in the comments. I'll do my best to jump in and respond down there too. On one hand, the Lakers never offered him that extension and then turned around and handed a $185 million contract to the exact player his own camp reportedly wanted shipped out. If you're the man who delivered this franchise its 2020 championship and you watch all of that unfold around you without anyone having the decency to sit you down about it, yeah, feeling disrespected would be completely fair. Loyalty is supposed to run in both directions. But here's the counter-argument, and it's just as valid. LeBron is about to turn 42. Luka is 26 and just led the entire league in scoring at 33.5 points a night. So what exactly is a franchise supposed to do? Build its next decade around a player with maybe a year or two left, or the one entering the absolute prime of his career? That's not disrespect. That's just sound roster management. Every legendary player eventually becomes someone a franchise has to plan around instead of plan for. Even the greatest athletes in sports history get old. Just look at what happened with Tom Brady toward the end in the NFL. The Lakers were trying to win now while also building for the future, and you genuinely can't always do both. But there's something worth remembering too, something I brought up repeatedly last offseason. LeBron made $52.6 million last year. He's been the highest paid, most accommodated player of his entire era for 2 decades running. So how much sympathy does the disrespect argument really deserve? I'll let you all hash that out in the comments. Is this just cold, calculated business or a genuine slight against a legend? Honestly, I think it's both, and I don't think you're required to pick just one side. That's what makes this whole thing complicated. But here's another piece of it that genuinely baffles me. This entire offseason should have been great news for LeBron. Let me walk you through why. Last season, for the first time in his career, LeBron was essentially the third option on his own team. He averaged 20.9 points, 7.2 assists, and 6.1 rebounds across 60 games, playing behind scoring champion Luka Doncic and behind Reaves, who was putting up 23 a night. And he thrived in that role. He shot a scorching 51.5% from the field, picking his spots carefully, playing fewer minutes and sitting out back-to-backs. He proved beyond doubt that he could still be lethal, carrying a lighter load. So here's what confuses me. Pairing with Luka was the ideal soft landing for a 41-year-old, a young MVP-caliber engine to shoulder the nightly workload, while LeBron settled into the role of the high-IQ co-star, picking his moments, chasing one more ring without needing to carry the team every night. That's the Kareem riding alongside Magic. That's David Robinson deferring to Tim Duncan, and Duncan later deferring to Kawhi Leonard on the way to a championship. Riding off into the sunset as the brilliant second option next to a young franchise cornerstone is basically the textbook graceful exit, and LeBron walked away from exactly that. The setup that should have been perfect for a player his age is the very one he chose to reject, and that's the part I can't fully explain. So why leave? I've got 3 theories, and honestly, I can't settle on just one. The first is that this was never really about his role on the court, it was about respect. LeBron would likely have been fine staying the second option. What he wouldn't accept was being quietly planned around, denied an extension, and written out of the franchise's future without so much as a conversation. If that's what happened, then leaving isn't ego, it's earned pride. A more cynical read is that ego doesn't slow down just because the body eventually does. Maybe some part of LeBron still needs to prove he can be the guy somewhere, even heading into his age 42 season, even though the smaller third option version of him was statistically the better fit for winning. And if that's the real explanation, it's a little hard to justify walking away from a 51% shooting role that was clearly working. Then there's the more human explanation. Maybe the ideal basketball fit and the ideal emotional fit simply stopped being the same place. Maybe the relationship had just run its course. Either way, LeBron answered the question with his wallet. And to understand that answer, you have to understand exactly what he was walking into, because the team he just joined didn't even exist a month ago. It was built in a single phone call, arguably one of the most lopsided phone calls in NBA history. Here are 2 facts worth sitting with. First, last spring, the Sid Shippers stunned everyone by knocking the second-seeded Celtics out of the playoffs in a Game 7. Jaylen Brown was visibly frustrated afterward and talked about it repeatedly on his Twitch streams, at one point saying that while he considered Embiid a great player, he felt Embiid flopped far too often. Now pay close attention to this next part because it still doesn't fully add up to me. Boston lost a Game 7 to Philadelphia and then turned around and handed Philadelphia their best player. And what Philly actually gave up makes it even stunning. Paul George, 2 future first-round picks, including an unprotected 2031 selection, and 2 second-round picks. George is 36 and was carrying one of the worst contracts in the league. His 2 seasons in Philadelphia were largely a disaster, marked by injuries in year 1 and a 25-game suspension last season for violating the league's anti-drug policy, finishing with just 16.7 points a game as a Sixer. Jaylen Brown, meanwhile, is coming off the best season of his career, averaging 28.7 points a night as Boston's #1 scoring option and earning an All-NBA second-team selection. Philadelphia essentially converted their biggest roster mistake into a top 15 player, and the total bill amounted to roughly 2 first-round picks. Celtics president Steven Stevens explained the reasoning by pointing to the cap space, noting that with Brown and Tatum combining for around 70% of the team's cap space and usage, the path forward looked increasingly difficult under the current collective bargaining agreement, which punishes teams built that top-heavy. To be fair to him, the math does check out. Boston ducked below the $200 million luxury tax threshold, and George's $54.1 million comes off the books a full year earlier than Brown's extension would have. That doesn't mean every Celtics fan is thrilled about it, but 3 weeks after that trade, LeBron James looked at the roster it created and signed for the league minimum. Whatever Brad Stevens was optimizing for financially, what he actually handed one of Boston's biggest rivals was a super team. So is this the greatest offseason in NBA history? In the span of 1 month, Philadelphia acquired an all-NBA caliber wing in his prime, and the greatest scorer the sport has ever seen, and the total cost was a declining 36-year-old they wanted off the roster anyway, 2 first-round picks, and, without question, the best value contract in league history, LeBron James for $3.9 million. The starting 5 now reads Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Jaylen Brown, LeBron James, and Embiid. Say that lineup out loud back in October, and people would have assumed you needed a drug test. The wildest part of this whole deal is that LeBron doesn't need to average anywhere close to 20 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists for this signing to be worth it. He could produce roughly half of that, and it would still be an incredible value, because he's on a pure veteran minimum contract. Now compare that to the most legendary off-seasons in league history. The 2007 Celtics gave up a mountain of young talent and draft capital for Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. The 2010 Miami Heat had to strip their roster down to the studs just to clear cap space for LeBron and Chris Bosh. The 2019 Clippers handed over 5 first-round picks and a young Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who'd go on to become an MVP, just to land Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Every historic offseason before this one came with a massive price tag. Philadelphia's price tag was Paul George and 2 first-round picks. On paper, this is the cheapest super team ever assembled, and I genuinely believe it might be the single best offseason any franchise has ever put together. That said, there are real question marks around whether Philadelphia actually wins a title this year, and it all comes down to health. The one thing that has consistently held this franchise back from a championship is how many games Embiid is actually available to play. Jaylen Brown's fit and LeBron's shot at a 5th ring both hinge almost entirely on Embiid staying on the floor, and everyone covering this team seems to agree. A super team whose star center can't stay healthy is just an expensive tragedy wearing nicer jerseys. And the path through the Eastern Conference has never looked tougher. The Knicks are the defending champions, Giannis just landed in Miami, and Cleveland remains loaded and understandably frustrated by this decision. LeBron is 41, entering his 24th season, and this roster has exactly one job: win now.